We're studying ancient words of Esther to be our guide in this next couple of weeks. I'm glad you're here to do that along with us, letting God speak to us through these stories. Oh, it seems a while ago that we went through the entire Bible in something called The Story. Maybe some of you remember that. A realization that when we find ourselves in those same stories, when we realize the same God that was working in those stories is working in our stories, then that really strengthens us, and these ancient words then can give us that strength to make it through in life. So we're working on Esther, and I want to maybe just kind of go, why Esther? Why this little book tucked away in the Old Testament that actually never even has the name God mentioned in it at all? And a verse I shared with you last week, I'd like to share again from Romans chapter 13. I think can be very helpful for us. Romans 15, excuse me. For everything that was written in the past was written to teach us, so that through endurance taught in the Scriptures and the encouragement they provide, we might have hope. Or as the song we just said, ancient words that are ever true can be changing you and me and helping us be stronger, be safer, be more confident, and be even more covered over with the love of God as His people wherever we walk and whatever we go through. So that's why we're going to try to do that. And to get started, I want to ask you to think about the difference between conscious and conscience. Mom was working with her son for a spelling bee, trying to get ready to make sure they understand the difference between the two, hear the difference between the two. And I think if I remember, the boy was 6th, 7th grade, right around there, working on this. And she said, well, do you know the difference between these two words? And he said, yeah, conscious is when you're aware of the right thing, and conscience is when you wish you didn't know the right thing. I have a conscience, and I know I shouldn't do that, but you're tempted, right? It kind of makes some sense. And I think we're going to see that the importance of both conscience, knowing the right thing, and then conscious, being aware of the time to know and say and do the right thing. And we're going to see that as we look at today's story in Esther. A reminder that Esther starts way, way back in 483 BC. That is a whole long time before you and I got here on the planet. And yet, the whole point of this is how their actions in this book affect history. And I think the whisper from God's ancient word is that our actions, our choices, the things that we in our conscience are aware we ought to be doing, and that our conscience to stay aware of living out our faith, those things will affect our history as well. The story around us, the story that impacts that, and the story that impacts people around us. Your history or mine may go a lot further, a lot smaller than others, but we're going to have an impact on people around us. And Esther shows us that, and Esther encourages us. Today specifically, as you heard the reading from Curtis, we want to take a look at the lessons of the actions of Mordecai. This is Esther's uncle. He is someone who not only has been guiding her in her whole process of becoming queen of this Persian empire, but Esther's uncle has also serving the king himself, serving Xerxes. It mentions there in the Old Testament reading his role of spending time at the gate. Is he an ambassador for Xerxes? Is he a special administrative clerk that's watching for taxes or whatever his situation is? But we don't know that exact role, but we know that he has that role working for the king in kind of a maybe not a very high level. You might think being at the gate is not that big of a deal, being like a toll keeper or a border patrol person compared to working in the White House might be more, seem like it's more important. But those people often at the front lines see and hear things that are really, really important. And that's what takes place, isn't it, in this reading? Mordecai hears these two guys who are upset. They think we're way out here on the border. We're way out here at the gate. Nobody's going to hear us, while they're muttering and complaining. But they are cooking up a plan to assassinate the king. Mordecai hears it. Well, I'm here as a captive Jew. Since he's not really my king, I'm waiting. I got 15 more years till the 70 years have been fulfilled, and then we get to go back to Israel, get to go back to Jerusalem, get to have our way. Maybe, a change of king speeds all that up. I don't know. He could have been thinking that. He could have just let it slide. But his conscience of knowing what is the right thing to do, to honor the one that he's been serving. And even in Bible class today, I will be exploring some of the scriptural guidance behind living that right life and living that life, especially in captivity. I will save you some of that for right now, but we'll go there in Bible class today. His conscience and his consciousness came together to do the right thing, to report this assassination plot, to stop the actions of these, the evil actions they were taking, and to save the king's life. Now, no one seems to have noticed. It gets recorded in the book, but he gets no reward out of it. Nothing good happens in Mordecai's life. He just did the right thing for the right reason. Now, I imagine, I'm in a room here of folks who are like, we do that every day. Why are you preaching to the choir, Pastor? What's going on here? But I want to also realize that this world grinds us in a way that it gets harder and more challenging to keep doing the right thing. Like when that neighbor pours out their heart and they share something with us that is a real burden. It might get a little harder in today's world where, that would be some juicy gossip for me to share something. That doesn't really hurt if I tell others about this burden that they shared with me. And it becomes, a matter for us when we think about this of how we might do things. Maybe, who's going to notice? Who's going to be aware? Well, 1 Thessalonians 5 verse 15, has a little bit to say to us about that. It's a reminder for us. Make sure that nobody pays back wrong for wrong, but always strives to do what is good for each other and for everyone else, even your enemies. We heard Jesus talk about that in the gospel. Can you do good for others that do good to you? Can you pat people on the back to pat you? Sure. But Jesus points out everybody does that. The real difference, the real challenge, is when it comes to our enemy. Somebody of the other political party, someone that we wish maybe wasn't our president or wasn't our king or whatever the situation was, the good that we can still do, lending to others even when they don't expect it, loving our enemies and doing good. Why? Jesus says, because the Heavenly Father has kept on doing good for all. He keeps on shining his sun on those who are evil and who are good. I think because he's waiting, he's hoping, he's believing that if he keeps on doing good, some of them will wake up. Some of their hearts will change. Some of them will notice and will make a difference. Now, you read that list, lending without expecting back. I remember a time when I was just become a Christian, and one of my sisters asked if she could borrow my bike. I lent it to her. It got stolen. Another sister asked if she could borrow my Walkman, little, kind of the new thing back then at that point, and I said sure, and it got stolen out of her backpack. And one of my sisters asked if she could borrow my car. Yeah, you laugh, but it gets hard sometimes, doesn't it? It's hard and challenging sometimes for us to still keep doing the good. Where do we get the strength to possibly do that? Where do you and I find the strength to keep doing that when it seems no one notices, or maybe they never will ever notice, where we're serving is in a way or in a situation where it's just us and God. It's the only one that are ever going to possibly be aware of it. How do we get the strength to do that? And I think a great answer for us comes from Jesus himself. In John chapter 10, Jesus talks about being the good shepherd. And he, the good shepherd, the greatest one, the one who has no evil in him, the one who is somehow, some way perfect and pure Son of God, here on this earth, he makes the choice to lay down his life for us. He makes the choice, as he goes on to say, I'm the good shepherd, and the good shepherd lays down his life for the sheep. The hired hand's going to go doing it. I'm not going to get a reward out of this. Why would I risk my life? Why would I take that chance? When he sees the wolf coming, he abandons it and runs away, and the wolf attacks the flock and scatters it. He's a hired hand, and he cares nothing for the sheep. Jesus is saying, I care deeply for you. And I'm reflecting the Father's heart that he cares deeply for you. And the strength of that love, the strength of that goodness of God, the strength of that can overcome evil with his goodness is the strength he offers us to keep doing the right thing at the right time for the right reason and trust that God will give the right reward when the time comes. There was a story, I believe his name was Billy Sunday. He was a great evangelist, more on the radio days, sort of the radio generation of Billy Graham, who was to follow. Billy Sunday once gave he was doing his things, traveling around the country, and he went to get on a bus to go ride the next day to where he had to go to, where he was going to teach. And he gives his dollar to the bus driver, and the bus driver gives his change. He's walking back, and he notices there's an extra dime in there. Well, what's a dime? Brother, can you spare me a dime? Oh, no big deal, whatever. But he stopped. He turned around. He went back to the bus driver and said, excuse me, you gave me an extra dime. And the bus driver stopped and said, you're right, Mr. Sunday, I did. See, I was at your revival last night, and I heard you speak. And it really touched my heart, but I wanted to know if you were for real. And I figured if you kept the extra dime, you were a fake. But now I'm going to come back again and hear what else you have to say about Jesus. True story, and I think rings true in our hearts, doesn't it? It rings true because you and I know something. We know this love of God that is so real, that is so strengthening, that can help us even do the right thing when no one else is watching, even if it means helping an enemy. And we know also, I hope, that the world may never read the Gospel of John and Matthew or Mark, but the world just might read the gospel of you. The gospel lived out in you. The gospel acted out as we take in that strength, won for us by Jesus Christ in his life and death and resurrection, and we live it out just as he did among us, with the Spirit strengthening us. The gospel of you just might make a big change like Mordecai did. We'll see more of when his change actually shows up as we go forward in the next chapters. But he did the right thing for the right reason with the strength God gave him. And we'll see where it comes. And we'll see, God willing, where it works in your life and in mine. To his glory, amen.